Yo! Video games.
What up, dudes? Matt here, back again with another Real Talk. This time something much more current than usual, and it's something I figure I probably need to start talking about right away, and that is your expectations for the Switch 2 and how they're probably wrong. Now, here's the thing. I'm obviously addressing the rumor that Nintendo showed off the Switch 2 at Gamescom behind closed doors, and the reports that they showed at least two different products, one which was a souped-up version of Breath of the Wild, and another which was the Matrix Unreal 5 tech demo, both running real-time on their hardware. There's even the other rumor that Final Fantasy VII Remake runs like the PS5 version on it. And here's the thing about this. I want to get this real quick here, and that is the most damning thing about all of this is that the damage has already been done. And for a lot of you, you might be already part of this hype machine or been suckered into this thing, because the takeaway that a lot of people are having, and you might even be having right now listening to this, is that Nintendo is releasing a new system next year, a Switch 2, and it's as powerful as a PlayStation 5 or a Series X, which isn't necessarily what the initial rumors are suggesting. First of all, just to be fair to them, but more importantly, the damning part is that's the takeaway. That's the headline. That's the tweet. That's the little bit of information that most people will just gravitate onto. Oh wow, the Switch 2 is as powerful as the PS5. And okay, so I want to break this all down real quick here, and let me start by saying I have been in this industry for a very long time. The first E3 I went to was 2001, the first public showing, or at least on the West Coast, or in the Americas, of the GameCube and the Game Boy Advance. So I've been covering system launches and covering behind-the-scenes stuff for a long time, and I have been privy over the years, working in various parts of the industry, I've been privy to information that is not public, that I will be obviously keeping to myself. A lot of it's old and out of date now and whatever, but I have a very long-standing history with how these things go, and I kind of want to try to take a step back here and sort of, if I can reach out to anyone out there and sort of clarify what's going on here and maybe help you bring things in line, because the reality is that people are going to take the information that's floating around right now, it's been floating around all week, and run with it with a narrative and a reality that you're just setting yourself up for disappointment. So let's go back in time. Let's go way back in time. Let's go back in time to probably before many of you watching this were probably even born, sadly. And let's go back to 1994. And Nintendo is shopping around, or at least floating around, PR campaign stuff for a thing called Project Reality, and how they've partnered with Silicon Graphics, and they're going to take their Onyx workstations, and they're going to make a chip that's going to be used in a home console in 1995. And you're going to get arcade CGI caliber graphics playable on your home, and it was all bullshit. There is some sort of, yes, it is, the MIPS system was sort of kind of based off of a custom version of stuff that in SGI workstations, kind of, but let's look at what reality was for Project Reality, and that was N64 games looked like PlayStation 1 games, but blurrier, but they didn't have the texture warping issue, or the chunkiness with the sort of pixelization. But at the end of the day, they kind of more or less look the same. You could look at a game like Crash Bandicoot 3, and that looks better than a lot of games on the N64. And the big example was Killer Instinct Gold and Cruisin' USA don't look anywhere nearly as good as their arcade counterparts, let alone the near CG quality prototypes that Nintendo themselves and Silicon Graphics were promoting around 1994 and into 1995. And of course, the system didn't even launch until late 96 in the Americas, June 96 in Japan. So I just kind of want to set this up for y'all. This is a long-standing tradition. It's kind of diminished over time, but I really need to go back and sort of stress that even as we stand right now, this is a rumor. This is a rumor, an unsubstantiated rumor coming from other news outlets about things they heard about, talked, or shown behind closed doors. So this is not official. The power and the demonstrations and the demos themselves that are in these reports about the Matrix Unreal 5 demo, the Zelda Breath of the Wild demo, these aren't even, we don't even know if these are real. But what was happening in 94, Nintendo was literally releasing videos, as you're seeing now, of a system touting its capabilities that were nowhere close to their quote-unquote project reality. This tradition would continue, by the way. When Sony first showed off the PlayStation 2, they had demonstrations of games that really didn't look like what the PS2 is capable of. You know, I'll show a real clip here of Ridge Racer and the Ridge Racer girl. You know, forgive me if I ever got her name. I'm not a turbo nerd. But this is clearly a character model that the PS2 on pretty much would never be able to show in-game, because it basically would be using up all the juice that was in the PS2 to actually render a character model this detailed. Square was also kind of in this hype train boat. They recreated the dancing ballroom scene from Final Fantasy VIII in engine, on the Emotion engine. That one looked a little closer to reality for what the PS2 could actually do, but it was still a little bit of a bullshot. And Sony used to go around touting how the PS2 could do 75 million polygons a second, but Sony also neglected to inform anyone was that was with absolutely nothing going on effects-wise. No texture effects, no lighting effects, nothing running. So you never actually saw a game running at that kind of crazy caliber. Now, don't get me wrong. Lots of magic was pulled out of the PS2, being the most successful console of all time. Tons of crazy shit did happen. But Sony was still kind of BSing y'all at the beginning. And this would continue even to the next system, to the PlayStation 3. Now, there is, of course, the infamous rubber duck in the bathtub sequence where they just dumped like hundreds, if not thousands of ducks, and oh, it's still running, it's still going in real time, you know, it's not even choking anything, and anyone who owned a PS3 during that era will kindly remember many games on PS3 chugged with their frame rate. And then, of course, that all leads to the absolutely infamous, probably still remembered to this day, Killzone 2 beta or tech demo footage of a real-time Killzone 2 game running on the power of the PlayStation 3 in 2005 E3. And yeah, it didn't look quite that good when it came out. Like, Sony was massively overselling what the PS3 was capable of. So just to sort of refresh here, before the N64 came out, Nintendo had literal promotional videos talking about graphics that the system was not capable of. Before the PlayStation 2 came out in '99, Sony had graphical demos showing off stuff that the PS2 was not really capable of. And in 2005, the Sony did the exact same thing again with the PlayStation 3, showing off tech demos of footage or games running at both with a polygon count and a frame rate that the PS3 was not capable of. And it would continue even further. We go to 2011, and here once again, they had the PlayStation 4, we had Agnes Philosophy. And if anyone remembers that was the big Square Enix, not Final Fantasy game they showed off, showing off the advantages of their Luminous engine, which is now dead completely, and the whole studio is shut down, showing off the capabilities of their engine on the PlayStation 4, which the PS4 was not capable of doing. Despite the fact that the PS4 pulled off some amazing feats, Ghost of Tsushima, both Horizon games, both God of War games, not discrediting what PS4 was capable of, but Agnes Philosophy was clearly bullshit for what the PS4, especially a vanilla PS4, could do. And these were officially released to the public, hype up, presentation videos, basically them saying, like, I promise you this is totally what's happening. And this kind of falls in line a lot with what an issue a lot of gamers have with these companies, and that they think the companies are kind of like, their best friends, and they kind of forget that the job of a publisher, the job of a corporation, is to fucking lie to you. Like, that's kind of what they do. These are lies. Now, what the artists do, what the game developers do, the creatives, they pull off some real magic. They do it even within the restrictions of what the console's actually capable of doing. But the PR machine, the marketing machine, the corporate side of all these game companies, they are liars. That is their job. They need to lie to you. They need to tell you the thing that they're making and selling is better than it actually is. Which is not to discredit the fact that, hey, I've gotten thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of enjoyment out of PlayStation 4, out of Nintendo Switch, out of all these things. I just want everyone to kind of be aware these are not the good guys talking to you when they show off and promote a video. And again, this is talking about the past right now. And again, when we go back and we're talking about these Switch 2 rumors, these are for rumors for a system that has not been publicly demonstrated. So this is hearsay of something that we have not actually seen. So maybe this changes. Maybe when Nintendo does show off the Switch 2 officially, which will not be anytime soon, definitely not this month, maybe they'll be more in line with their expectations. Maybe it will be what I believe is a more accurate one, might be a souped up Breath of the Wild. But let's address the two things they showed off. Let's just see these rumors head on. I want to talk about that now. Breath of the Wild, souped up. I don't understand this part of the rumor. Nintendo was apparently showing off probably a higher resolution, higher frame rate version of Breath of the Wild running on its successor to the Switch. Even if this was just basically them playing the game as is, just on the Switch, like, hey, we're not making a definitive edition. It's just if you have a copy of Breath of the Wild, a cartridge or a download, and you re-download it on, say, the new system, it runs a better version of that game, which is entirely possible. Even if it was that, I have a hard time understanding why Nintendo would use Breath of the Wild and not Tears of the Kingdom. Breath of the Wild is a launch game for the Switch, and it was a cross-gen launch game of a game that was primarily developed for the Wii U. So it seems weird to me that if they were showing off the Switch 2 behind closed doors, they're like, hey, look at this. We can run a 1080-60 version of a Wii U game. Wow. It doesn't, to me, I'm like, I get it. Breath of the Wild is a mega seller, the best-selling Zelda game of all time, the third best-selling Switch game of all time, or fourth best, something like that. But there is something to be said about the fact that I'm like, I don't know why that would be the thing they immediately jump to promote their new system behind closed doors, saying, hey, old games run well on it. Well, that's good, but that is hardly revolutionary, and it's hardly something that I would use if the point of Gamescom being to basically get people to buy dev kits from them or seeing who's interested in dev kits. I hardly think them running a really old Wii U game that was on Switch at launch is hardly the seller that it should be, unless the idea is just that, hey, it naturally runs old Switch games really well. Maybe that's the point of it. That is a possibility. But I find it really weird that was the one of the games rumored. The other one is the Matrix Unreal 5 demo. Now this is where I start getting into, this seems like bullshit to me because two reasons. Number one, why would Nintendo be using something from Epic to promote their system? The obvious answer is that, like, well, it's showing that it can run Unreal 5. Technically, Unreal 5 runs on the Switch right now for Fortnite. The Unreal 5 and 4 still technically run on the Switch. Saying the Switch 2, oh, it'll run Unreal 5, cool, like, why wouldn't it? You know, but then it's like, but it can do all the razzle-dazzle stuff that was shown in that playable Matrix Unreal 5 tech demo that came out for the PS5 and the Xbox Series X. And this is where I start to get a little bit like, okay, maybe, but I doubt it. And again, I doubt the fact that Nintendo would not be using something they created on their own, because we go back to every single reveal of a system from the N64 when they were partnering with a third party with Silicon Graphics, but that was an exclusive partnership. There is no exclusive partnership between Nintendo and Epic. Back to the GameCube, when we go back to, and I'll get to this, the Wii U, they were not necessarily using any other third party like Epic to really show off someone else's game engine. So, like, a big part of what Nintendo likes to do is they like to keep things close to their chest, and they like to, like, show off stuff that they themselves are coming up with. I mean, they have like 10 internal development studios of their own. This is kind of like, this is what they would be doing. I just find the idea that they would be using a demo for Matrix using Unreal 5, you know, so a Warner Brothers property using, you know, an engine that they don't own from a company they don't really, that they only have a working relationship with, as their main selling point for their next system. It doesn't sound very Nintendo to me at all. So I'm inclined to think that maybe this part of the rumor is kind of bull. Maybe it's not, maybe it is. I mean, we don't really know. I just think that these rumors are stretched truth. Here's what I do believe. 100% believe Nintendo was at Gamescom. I 100% believe Nintendo did show off the Switch 2. I 100% believe that Nintendo was looking for third-party publishers, developers at Gamescom, seeing who is interested in a dev kit, seeing who would want to jump on board, seeing how fast they could get a product on their system. And the only way the Matrix demo makes any sense to me is for them to say, look, here's this thing that was not built for the Switch 2 at all. It was built for the next-gen consoles in mind with Unreal 5 engine, and we got it up and running on our Switch 2 hardware very quickly. So if you're making an Unreal 5 game, you can quickly get it up and running on our next system. That is the only scenario in which I can see why Nintendo would bother using someone else's property on someone else's engine to promote, something else entirely on their Switch 2. That's just using it in specifically as a means to say to third-party devs, look, if you got an Unreal 5 game, it will port over to our system very easily. I do think, even if that is true, if we want to go down that rabbit hole, we got to sit here and take a step back and go, it is definitely in no way, shape, or form running as well as on PlayStation 5 or Series X. It is in no way, shape, or form will Nintendo's next system be comparable to those consoles. And let's just talk about this from a very practical, physical standpoint. In 2005, Satoru Iwata, the then president of Nintendo, presented on stage a prototype of the Nintendo Revolution, later to be called the Wii. He pulled it out of his jacket pocket and he said that the final model of the system would be even thinner. It would be about 3 DVD cases stacked on top of each other. That's how big it was going to be. And to be fair to them, IGN at the time pointed out very correctly that when they saw that and they saw how small the system was going to be, that they said, look, here's the reality. The Nintendo Revolution will not have next-gen graphics. And next-gen at the time was the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3. They basically correctly surmised that, okay, a system that tiny, that thin, will not have the hardware that is being sold, at the same time in the 360 and the PS3. And they were 100% right. I mean, Iwata said, when you turn the system on and you see the graphics, you will say, wow. Unfortunately, he was right, but in the complete opposite way that he meant. Because, as we all know, that the Wii was more or less a GameCube, graphically speaking. It never really reached much beyond what the GameCube could do, especially when you look at games like Rogue Squadron 3 and whatnot. So it was kind of like a harsh reality, and it struck me because at the time I remember reading that and thinking, oh god, they're right. It is really thin. There is actually no way. So now let's think about where we are practicality with the Switch. Switch 2 is probably going to be a little bigger than a Switch, right? Right now, when you look at Steam Deck, when you look at the ROG Ally in particular, these systems are beefy. They are expensive, and they are nowhere close to the power of a Series X or a PlayStation 5. So if in 1 year from now, Nintendo's going to release a Switch 2, and the assumption is it's as powerful as a PS5, think of how big the PS5 is and how big a Series X is. These things are mini fridges. If you think you're suddenly going to get that in a handheld of comparable size to a modern-day Switch or a ROG Ally or a Steam Deck, you're frankly setting yourself up for disappointment. The battery life would be 30 minutes. The thing would basically turn into a dying sun, if you turn it on for 15 because of how much power consumption it's going to be. The ion battery is going to explode if you tried to jam something that much juice into a console that's a handheld and have how much vent? Like, will 70% of the handheld be a giant fan? It just, look how big the fan in the PS5 is, and those things already have weird failure rates. So I just want to kind of bring this back to reality, guys. You are not getting a PlayStation 5 or Series X powered Switch next year, despite whatever reports or rumors say. Because they have a long history of A, lying to you, the public, to your face. They have a long history of over-promising, under-delivering. Nintendo even did it themselves all the way back in 2011 with the Wii U tech demos. If you look at the bird flying through the Japanese garden tech demo, if you look at even the Zelda tech demo where he fights the Armagoma, they never made Wii U games that looked that good. They never did, and those were publicly shown tech demos. Like, this is a long history of kind of like they tell you one thing, you get the system, and it's really not really quite that much. And even if it does get close, it takes all the way to the end of a system's life before you start getting games that look kind of in the realm of approachability of what the tech demo was shown a year before the system came out. So yes, I just really don't want you guys to like take away of this, like, oh, Nintendo's going to have this big beefy system next year. And even if they did have a big beefy system, what do you think that's going to cost? The ROG Ally goes upwards around $700. I don't think Nintendo is going to have a more powerful system than that and sell it for $700, $800, $1,000. People would buy it, don't get me wrong. Like, this is Nintendo we're talking about. People would absolutely bust down the doors at Best Buy to buy a $1,000, beefy Switch. They could do it. They could totally get away with it. But even then, Nintendo won't do it. Nintendo, I find Nintendo is probably very hesitant to even scratch beyond 400. They're probably wanting 400. Even though I think 500 would be fair. If they could get a system, when it is docked, comes within sight of an Xbox Series S, like the current $300, set box console for Microsoft. If at $500 they can get a hybrid console that gets kind of close to a Series S or even a PlayStation 4 Pro, like comparison-wise, I think that would be very, very exciting. Because remember, a PS4 Pro can run God of War Ragnarok, it can run Horizon 2 Forbidden West, can't run the DLC, I guess, but it can run Ghost of Tsushima, it can run a lot of really good games, and run them pretty darn well. It can run Resident Evil 4 Remake even. If we could even get to that, I think that would be a win. But what we're not going to get is you are not going to get a game that's going to suddenly run things that only a PlayStation 5 could run. You're not going to get your Returnals or your Demon Souls remakes caliber of games, of graphics and abilities on the Switch 2. It's just not going to happen because it's still going to be a portable system. Granted, Nintendo hasn't even announced the thing, so what if it's not a portable? What if it's a console? Nintendo's not doing a console ever again. That you just gotta let go. Nintendo is in hybrid console, portable hybrid for now, for the foreseeable future, probably until you die. The Switch was just too successful, and frankly, I don't even mind it. I kind of dig the idea that it's a hybrid console. I like the portability factor of it. I think it's pretty swanky. Just being real with y'all, this system and the rumors coming out, the takeaway is it's as powerful as a PS5. It's not. It's not going to be. And if they tell you it is, they're lying. And if they show you a video, it's bull. It's not going to be that. The only time I would believe that a Switch 2 is as powerful as a PS5 in a portable hybrid console is if I buy the system on day one and there is a fully playable game running at 60 frames and doing ray tracing and doing all this gee whiz stuff, and it's all happening on the system that I'm playing. That is the only time I will believe that, because I've been here before. I've been here before many, many, many times since 2001, guys. And honestly, as a wee lad, just reading every bit of game magazine and early internet website I could, I can tell you from the beginning, the whole video game industry has a long, terrible history of overpromising, under-delivering when it comes to launching a new system. And I just beg of you, do not fall into this hype machine. If you take away anything from this video, it's that Switch 2 is probably going to be good, but it will not be PS5 good. And I hope your expectations weren't that, and if they are, please reconsider. So that's all I gotta say about that. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and I will see you on the channel. Later, dudes.